Okay, we're going to look at another way to write melodies in this lesson, but first I'm just going to rename this track to Melody 3, as it's the last melody we made, and I'm going to turn it off by pressing 0, deactivating the clip. I'm just going to move it down here so they're in order. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just insert another MIDI track, rename it to Melody 4, and copy and paste the chords down so we can use them as a reference again. So we have our harmony in mind when we are writing our melodies. Now, as per usual, I'm going to deactivate these chord notes so we can just see the harmony below, and yeah, we just get an idea of what notes we can use. Now, in this lesson, we are going to be talking about passing notes and auxiliary notes. So first, I'll explain passing notes. So I'm just going to change the grid here to quavers for this example. All right. So this first chord here is a C minor chord. So let's imagine our first beat has a C played on it, and our second beat has an E flat. Okay, so these are both parts of the chord, as you can see below. But what we can do is we can pass between these two notes with the next note of the scale. So the C minor scale goes C, D, E flat, F, G, and so on, all the way up. If we add a D here, this is what we call a passing note because it passes between the two chord notes stepwise with another note in the scale that falls between them. So if we look at the C minor scale again, it goes C, D, E flat. So this is what we call a passing note. Now, let's take another example. So let's say on this beat we have an E flat, okay? And the very next note in the scale is F, okay? But if we were to come back to the E flat, this is now what we call an auxiliary note. So E flat, moving to the next note in the scale, and then coming back to the original note. Now, an auxiliary note can also work downwards as well. So we could go to E flat, then we could go to back in the scale, back a step down to the D, and then back to the E flat, and that is an auxiliary note. Likewise, with our passing note, we could move stepwise down as well, going from the E flat to the D to the C, working down in the scale. Okay? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a melody that uses a passing note and an auxiliary note within it, and then we'll come back and talk about it at the end. Okay, so I've created a new melody that incorporates some passing notes, or a passing note and an auxiliary note. So I'm just going to drag massive onto the track so we can hear it. Close out of that for now. Back to our MIDI notes by double clicking on the MIDI clip. And let's just have a listen to it. All right, cool. So let's have a look at the passing note. So the passing note is used here. So just like in the example we did at the start, we've gone from C, D to E flat. Okay, so passing a chord note to the next note in the scale and then going to the chord note there. Okay, so that's an example of the passing note here. We've used an auxiliary note here. So we've gone from a B flat, which is a note in the B flat major chord, and then we've gone to the very next note in the scale, which is C, and then going to B, back to B flat again after that. So coming back down the scale to make an auxiliary note. So the auxiliary note is, I guess, the note, the non-chord note that kind of falls in between. And likewise here, the passing note is the non-chord note that falls in between. So hopefully that makes sense if you look at the scale and look at how it moves stepwise, and that's how auxiliary and passing notes can be used. Now you notice we haven't put them everywhere, because again, if you use too many passing notes or auxiliary notes, you lose the kind of harmony behind it. If you use too many non-chord notes, you kind of lose the sense of the chord in the first place, and it will start to feel like another chord should go there, and the harmony doesn't work. So just be subtle with these and use these just to add little bits and pieces of flavor, and don't go overboard with them. Okay, now you've had 4 different ways to look at melodies. Move on to the last lesson. We'll just talk about how we're going to structure it for this composition.